So ableism essentially would be the discrimination or prejudice against people with disabilities, and oftentimes ableism is very subtle. So people aren't generally trying to be ableist or trying to discriminate or show prejudice, but it often shows up in our society just kind of organically. And it's often kind of based on the premise that able-bodied people inherently have kind of greater value. So it's not that that is necessarily true, but generally with ableism, that is what those kind of the things that are ableist, that is what it is based on, or ableist ideas.
I would say it's social prejudice against people with disabilities on the basis that able bodies are superior.
To me, I take ableism as kind of viewing disability as something that needs to be changed, viewing it as a problem, rather than just kind of accepting it as a facet of somebody's identity. And in that, there's like exclusive practices, there's just means of keeping these people down, keeping them separated from normal people. The concept of normal people, I think, is a really ableist viewpoint. And just the systems that we have in place, we learn in the classroom, like special education, that's pulling kids out, that's taking away their ability to learn in a real classroom with their peers. So just those exclusive practices that view disability as something that needs to be like removed from the public.
I feel like ableism can take on like conscious or unconscious forms, because like obviously sometimes people don't like purposely or like overtly show ableism or practice ableism, but it can also like happen without even like trying to, because like even when like I walk around Syracuse like university campus, like it's not like super accessible. Like some of the buildings don't have elevators, even like the sidewalks don't have curb cuts for people with wheelchairs. So like when you see people with wheelchairs like going on the sidewalks, like they often have to like jump off of it instead of having like access to a curb cut where they can just smoothly get off the sidewalk. So I think there's a lot of different forms that we see in our everyday lives.
What ableism looks like to me as a person with a neuromuscular and mobility disability is different than what ableism looks like if you're blind or deaf or have autism or another disability. Ableism to me is discrimination against a person's disability.
Any type of discrimination, ableism can be very like implicit or explicit. So I think like explicitly just people who talk down to people with disabilities or use different slurs. Or then like implicitly, I think it's like a lack of maybe wheelchair ramps or just kind of things like that.
Had a mobility impairment and they wanted to do a recreational activity, and somebody would say to them, I wouldn't suggest it because of your disability, or I wouldn't do that, or you can't do that. If there's any adjustments that are made, any tailoring to be done, any modifications to different tools or strategies, anything can be accomplished by anybody regardless of their situation.
There's a lot of things in society, like a lot of issues and like words that have been thrown around for like generations that people might not realize it's offensive to other people, and it's just kind of like a common words or phrases that people say and they don't realize like the impact of them.
The kind that we view isn't as prominent anymore, like the in your face stuff. It's what I call benevolent ableism. It is the thing that when you see an ad for Paralympics or Special Olympics, your first thought isn't look at this amazing athlete. Your first thought is look what they overcame. It's that you as a person would help a blind man not because they're a human being, but because they're blind.
Like one of the ones I always kind of laugh about that to me is an example is when, it says like, in case of a fire, don't use the elevators. And it's got, an able-bodied individual on the sign. And it's sort of like, well, if I were using an elevator because I couldn't literally physically could not take the steps. Like, great, what do I do now?
You know, I guess like a suggestion would just be, you know, have like compassion for other human beings, and like just like think about like what you say before you say it. Like, you know, if you know, there's like a term, it's like if you have to say no offense before something, like, you know, like it's probably going to be offensive, don't say that, you know, like it's that kind of thing, I guess, like would be my advice. Like if it's something that you're questioning whether or not you should say to somebody that has a disability, like just don't say it. Like,
the way we're going societal with just the more diverse inclusion of what we see as, you know, male and female, and, you know, just as ability versus disability. I don't see, you know, I say in the word disability, there's the word ability. I think, you know, we're going to start seeing, and we are now, that, you know, we're neurodiverse thinkers, and we can't be left out, you know, in hiring practices. You know, we have to start thinking. So I do think in 25 years we're going to start, and I think there is it's coming our way, this sway in the, you know, employers hiring people and just bringing a perspective to meet everybody. So yes, I hopefully in 25, I'd like to see that, a better understanding.